Welcome back to the channel, everyone. Today I want to talk about side impacts. Now, these can be a little confusing if you're using a 3D measuring system to figure out if the car is bent any in the center, because if you watch my other videos on setting up a 3D measuring system, you need to start from an undamaged portion of the car. And if you've got a car that's been impacted, say in the left side here, a T-bone, and it put a little bit of deflection in the car, well, you put your 4 control points on here to start your measurements, and it assumes that that's an undamaged part, so it's going to kind of spread out evenly any damage to one point. So it's a little bit confusing. It's not going to give you a true picture. Now, these cars, they don't bend like they used to. With all the reinforcements, the 2 and 3 layers of rocker panels and B-pillars and high-strength steel, it's not like in the old days where the other side of the car, the door gaps would open up and the side of impact, everything would be tight. But you can still have an issue with that slightly. So what you need to do if you're using a 3D measuring system is come back here and use these points underneath your rear torque boxes as your starting point, your control point, and then go to the rear of the car and pick up 2 points here on the rear of the frame rails. That'll square up the back of the car with the front of the car. So then you come up here, your reference point, and you get under the A-pillar. What it's going to show you is the center line of your car now is going off at an angle this way because the car has a little bit of deflection to it. And it'll show that these points are over, and it could only be a couple millimeters. But when you do your pulls on your rocker panel, all you have to do is just wait for, say, these things they might be, this would be -3 millimeters, this would be +3 millimeters. That's how much out of center. Once you do all your pulling, once these are back into 0, you know your car is nice and straight. And, you know, anytime you're doing pull on a rocker panel that's been hit from one side to the other, or that's crushed in pretty good, even if you're replacing these outer sections, it's a good idea to measure this and do some initial pulls on this to get all the damage out. But you want to do multiple pulls. You want to try and get as many clamps on the side of that car, on that rocker panel, as you can while you're pulling. You don't really see it anymore. Like I said, the way these things, as tough as they're built. But years ago, we'd put one of the towers on each end of the car and actually stretch that out while you're pulling, and that'll help alleviate a lot of that tension. Getting into the B-pillars, what you run into, sometimes, you know, a lot of these are being replaced now, but if it's still repairable, and you'll have, if you got hit right on that lower hinge, and you'll see that kink back there, and that lower hinge actually sets in. If you just bolt something onto here, now they make those, it's a steel plate with a D-ring welded to it, and you can bolt it in here. All those tend to do is just pull out the area right where those bolts are. And they don't address the issue is the B-pillar in slightly where your weather strip goes, where your door seal against. You have to get all that out evenly. So usually what I do, and it's getting tougher, like I said, these cars they're not made to work on like they used to be. But if you can get to the back side of this, remove the trim, remove the seat belt, and you look inside your B-pillar, and a lot of times that seat belt pocket is right behind that hinge, and you can get in here with, I'd use like a deep impact socket, inch and a half diameter, something to put in there, and put your sill hook behind that and try and pull all those layers at the same time. I've taken blocks of wood, a 4x4, cut it down so it fits in here, but you want to get behind that. It'll actually relieve this kink, plus it'll pull anything out of here that could be pushed in. Now, it's always been kind of a chore too to take and get your right measurement on here to make sure those hinge bolts are right where you need to be. You know, just a couple millimeters in is going to give you all kinds of problems getting these doors to fit because you don't have adjustments on doors like you used to. So you can measure this with your 3D system, but what I've run into several times depending on what system you're using and which car you've got, what make and model, they might not have any information in there to measure. And you can create your own point. Most of these systems, you can go in a computer and they'll tell you how to create your own point, compare it from the other side. But if you don't do it enough, like it was rare that I run into this case where there wasn't a measurement. And it takes you more time to go through the computer and figure out how to set all this up. And it's like, there's got to be an easier way. So what I would do, I would make my own point basing off something else. And it might be a little hard to explain, but let me see if I can show you. You know, underneath the cars, usually you'll have this, you know, that rail in there with different holes in it that's in between. It's underneath the floor somewhere, connects the front and rear rails together. I'll pick a point that's close to what I want to pull. Say I'll go with this point here and this point here. So I'll measure the opposite side. I'll make up whatever probes, whatever attachments I need to hang my probe down here on this side. I'll start on the undamaged side, but I'll enter it under this point here. And say if they use, say, the letter N, and I'm going to use that, and I'm going to measure out here. Actually, have my point out there. So it's going to show that, say, my length, it's picking up that it's back too far, say 42 millimeters. Now it's going to show my width is out by 85 millimeters. And then the length, being I'm measuring way up here, but the probe is actually picking up down here, it's going to show my, actually the height is going to be, say, 130 millimeters off. So all I do is just measure this side now, and as long as these measurements are the same as over here, that's all I care. And a basic thing you need anyway is your width. All you want to find out is that in or out. It's not going to change your length, it's not going to change your height, but if this come up and it's showing it's 85 millimeters out, and I come over here and it's showing it's 80 millimeters out, I know, or 70 millimeters out, or whatever it is, all I want to do is match this side to that side. Now, the manufacturer of these systems may not agree with this technique, but I've used it multiple times over the years, and it does work. That's all I'm looking at, just comparative side, and without going through all the trouble of figuring out how the computer works and enter all these. I just make my own up, make it match side to side, it works. So I hope some of these tips work for you. One thing, like I was saying, if you come back here and measure these 4 points before you get to here, you'll get a true reading. And it may not apply today too much on the unibody cars. As tough as they are, they don't bend like they used to. But this technique you will know how to have to use once we get into full frames, because that's one of the main ways to measure the overall length of a frame with the 3D measuring system. So we'll get into that in the future. But I hope maybe you got something out of this video. So thanks for watching.